Welcome to a deep dive into a true crime case that has it all, really. Family, loss, the dark side of technology, and this unwavering pursuit of justice. It's the disappearance of Joanna Rogers, a 16-year-old from a small town in Texas. Buckle up, though, because this one's a roller coaster.
Yeah, no kidding. I think what really drew me to this case was the time period,
Hmm.
2004. The internet, it was still pretty new territory, especially for investigators, trying to track down a missing person back then.
Right. We're going to be looking at early internet chat rooms, a massive landfill search, and a suspect who was living, well, a shocking double life, really. But first, let's introduce the key players here. Joanna Rogers, a vibrant 16-year-old. Her mom, Kathy Rogers, she really led the charge to find her. And then there's Rosendo Rodriguez, the suspect with a dark secret.
It's interesting how this all unfolded in a seemingly idyllic small town.
Hmm.
The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and nothing like this ever happens.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of Joanna for our listeners. Could you tell us a bit more about what she was like?
So Joanna, by all accounts, she was a typical teenager, active in her church, loved theater, big personality. She also had a boyfriend, Marcus. He had kind of a gothic look, something that might worry parents, especially back then.
Yeah, I can see that. I remember being a teenager in the early 2000s. Anything outside the norm, it definitely raised some eyebrows. Did Joanna have any quirks, any habits?
Well, according to the sources, Joanna had this baby blanket. She'd had it since she was a baby, and she took it everywhere with her. Even at 16, wouldn't leave home without it.
That's a detail that sticks with you, and I bet it plays a significant role in the story.
It does, yeah. This seemingly insignificant detail, it becomes crucial to understanding how the investigation unfolded.
I'm hooked already. So set the scene for us. It's May 3rd, 2004. What happened?
So around 3:00 a.m., Kathy and Joe Bill, Joanna's parents, they're woken up by some noises in the kitchen. Joe Bill, he's a former private investigator, actually. He checks it out, but he doesn't see anything unusual. They figure it's just an animal, go back to sleep.
So far, so normal. But I'm guessing things take a turn.
Later that morning, Kathy goes to wake Joanna up for school, finds Joanna's bed messed up, her coat on the floor. But Joanna's gone.
Wait, so all her stuff was still there?
All her belongings, yeah. Her wallet, phone, keys, everything left behind. Except her baby blanket.
Wow. That's unsettling.
Kathy knew instantly something was wrong. She told investigators Joanna wouldn't have left willingly without her blanket.
That's a mother's intuition, right? Knowing her child so well that a missing blanket is a huge red flag.
Exactly. And that detail immediately shifts the focus of the investigation. Police now suspect foul play and begin to look at potential suspects.
So who are the initial persons of interest?
So naturally, police first look at those closest to Joanna. Kathy and Joe Bill, but they're quickly cleared. Then they look at Marcus, the boyfriend, but he checks out too. There was also a coworker from the subway where Joanna worked.
Hold on, what about this coworker? What was going on there?
Joanna had mentioned that he'd been making inappropriate comments, staring at her, even showing up at the store when he wasn't scheduled to watch her.
That's creepy. What did they find out about him?
It turns out Joe Bill, Joanna's dad, he took matters into his own hands. Confronted the coworker. Remember, he had a bit of a colorful past himself. He'd been a horse trainer, a shrimp boat captain, even an exotic animal dealer.
Wow, what a character. So what happened with the coworker?
Police were able to track him down, confirm he had an alibi for the night Joanna disappeared.
So back to square one.
Not exactly. With those closest to Joanna cleared, the investigation takes a turn. The police start looking into Joanna's digital life.
Ah, yes. Remember, this is 2004. The internet's still a relatively new phenomenon, and I bet investigators were just starting to understand the dangers lurking in those chat rooms.
That's right. It was uncharted territory in many ways, and their findings would eventually lead them to a suspect. But before we get to that, there's another layer to this story.
Oh, what's that?
Just 7 weeks after Joanna's disappearance, another young woman, Jennifer Wilkerson, goes missing from the same town. She was last seen leaving her boyfriend's house, and just like Joanna, vanished without a trace.
Hold on. Two young women disappearing from the same small town within weeks of each other. That's incredibly unsettling.
It definitely raised a lot of questions. Could these cases be connected? Was there a predator operating in this seemingly quiet town?
I can only imagine the fear and uncertainty that gripped the community.
Absolutely. And as weeks turned into months, the search for both Joanna and Jennifer continued.
So where does the investigation go from here? What's the next major development?
Well, about a year after Joanna's disappearance, a horrifying discovery is made at the local landfill. A worker finds a suitcase containing the body of a young woman.
Oh no, was it Joanna?
It was a terrifying moment for everyone. The victim was nude, badly beaten, and had reddish hair, similar to Joanna's. But thankfully it wasn't her. The medical examiner identified the victim as Summer Baldwin, a 29-year-old woman who had been struggling with addiction.
That's a relief, but still a horrific discovery. What happened to Summer?
That's what investigators set out to determine. And you won't believe what they found.
I'm all ears. Let's hear it. Okay, so we've got this gruesome discovery at the landfill. A young woman named Summer Baldwin found in a suitcase.
Where do investigators go from here? You mentioned they found something unbelievable.
Well, think about it. A landfill, I mean. It's massive. It would be incredibly difficult to find any clues in that environment. But investigators, they caught a break.
What kind of break could you possibly get in a landfill?
Believe it or not, it was a simple suitcase tag. It led them straight to a local Walmart, where they were able to review, security footage. What they saw was a man matching the description, given by Summer Baldwin's friend, the one who last saw her alive, buying a suitcase and a pair of latex gloves.
So they had him on camera. That's incredible. What happened next?
So thanks to the barcode on that suitcase, they were able to identify the buyer, Rosendo Rodriguez, a 25-year-old Marine reservist.
Wait, a Marine reservist, no criminal history. This is where things start to get really interesting, right? It's like something out of a movie. Seemingly, upstanding young man leading this double life. That's exactly what investigators thought. They arrested Rodriguez and confiscated his computer, and that's when they found something truly disturbing.
What did they find?
Rodriguez had been following Joanna Rogers' case online. He was obsessed with it.
Whoa, okay. Now the pieces are starting to come together. Remember those early internet chat rooms we talked about? I bet they found a link between Joanna and Rodriguez.
You're exactly right. Investigators discovered that Joanna and Rodriguez had been chatting online just hours before she disappeared. They were using those early internet platforms, the ones that weren't as closely monitored as they are today.
That's chilling. It really highlights how vulnerable teenagers were in those early days of the internet. I can see why Kathy Rogers would have regrets about not monitoring Joanna's online activity more closely.
Absolutely. And this case serves as a powerful reminder for parents, even today, about the importance of online safety.
So they have Rodriguez, they have this online connection to Joanna, but they still don't have Joanna. What happens next?
Well, Rodriguez is already facing the death penalty for Summer Baldwin's murder. So investigators, they make a controversial decision. They offer him a deal. Tell us what happened to Joanna and lead us to her body, and we'll take the death penalty off the table.
Wow, that's a high-stakes gamble. Did he take the deal?
He did. In a chilling confession, Rodriguez describes meeting Joanna online, claiming they met in person and had, consensual sex. Afterward, he says Joanna threatened to report him to the police for statutory rape.
So he's claiming self-defense. I'm guessing you're as skeptical about that claim as I am.
Very much so. I mean, the brutality of the murders, the disposal of the bodies, the fact that he was following Joanna's case online before they even met, none of it points to a panicked act of self-defense.
It sounds like he's trying to control the narrative and minimize his guilt, which is something we see often in these kinds of cases.
Exactly. But despite their skepticism, investigators focus on one key detail: the location where Rodriguez claims he dumped Joanna's body.
The landfill. He says he dumped Joanna's body in the landfill, just like Summers.
That's right. And so begins a massive, daunting search of a local landfill. Can you imagine the task facing those search teams? The sheer size of the landfill, the heat, the stench, the decomposition.
It sounds almost impossible, like trying to find a needle in a haystack. But the haystack is a mountain of garbage.
It was a Herculean effort. But those teams, they were incredibly dedicated. They were determined to bring Joanna home.
But after months of searching, they find nothing. I can only imagine how devastating that must have been for everyone involved, especially Joanna's family.
It was a crushing blow. Hope was fading fast. The search was about to be called off.
Wait, so they almost gave up? What happened?
It was the day before the landfill search was set to end. Imagine the pressure, the exhaustion, the dwindling hope. But as one of the searchers was meticulously raking through a section of debris, something caught their eye.
What did they find? Tell me they found something.
They did. First, a skeletal hand emerged from the dirt, and then, slowly, painstakingly, the rest of Joanna's remains were uncovered.
Wow, that's incredible. After almost 2 years. And just when everyone was about to give up, Joanna is found. That must have been a bittersweet moment.
It was a mix of profound relief, overwhelming sadness, and a sense of closure that had been so long in coming.
And I remember you mentioning earlier that Kathy Rogers attributed the discovery to divine intervention. It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? After all that time, against all odds.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure.
But as we know, the story doesn't end there. What happens to Rodriguez?
Well, in a shocking turn of events, he decides to renege on the plea deal.
Are you serious? After confessing, after leading investigators to Joanna's body, what was he thinking?
It's a legal maneuver. That, while frustrating, is sometimes allowed. He basically gambled that a jury might believe his self-defense claims.
So, what happened? Did they try him for Joanna's murder?
Because of the plea deal fiasco, Rodriguez couldn't actually be tried for Joanna's murder. There wasn't enough physical evidence to directly link him to the crime, despite his confession.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for Joanna's family, knowing that he might not be held accountable for her death.
Absolutely. It was a difficult pill to swallow, but they were determined to see justice served for Summer Baldwin's murder. And so the trial began.
What happened at the trial? Paint a picture of what it was like.
During the trial, prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence against Rodriguez. They highlighted his online interactions with both Joanna and Summer, the purchase of the suitcase and gloves, his confession, and they argued that his claims of self-defense were simply not credible.
Did they present a psychological profile of Rodriguez? Was there any attempt to understand what might have driven him to commit these acts?
They did bring in expert testimony to analyze his behavior, suggesting that his online activity and the brutality of the crimes pointed to something more sinister than self-defense.
What about Kathy Rogers? How did she hold up through all of this?
She remained remarkably strong. She even testified at the trial, describing her daughter, the impact of her loss, and the chilling moment she realized Joanna was gone.
It's hard to fathom the strength and courage it must have taken to face the man accused of murdering your daughter. Did she ever express any anger or resentment towards Rodriguez?
She did. She said that while watching Rodriguez in court, she sensed a complete lack of remorse. It was like he saw both Joanna and Summer as, disposable, just pieces of trash to be discarded.
Wow, that's powerful. So what was the verdict?
In 2008, after a long and emotional trial, Rosendo Rodriguez was found guilty of Summer Baldwin's murder and sentenced to death.
Justice was served, at least for Summer's family.
It was a long road, but they finally got the justice they deserved.
What about Joanna's family? Did they ever get any sense of closure?
For Kathy Rogers, Rodriguez's conviction and eventual execution in 2018, it provided a measure of closure. She even attended his execution, feeling a sense of relief that this chapter of her life was finally over.
That's incredible. But even with Rodriguez behind bars and ultimately executed, there's still so many unanswered questions. What about Jennifer Wilkerson, the other young woman who vanished from the same town?
Her case remains unsolved to this day.
That's a haunting reminder that sometimes, despite our best efforts, answers remain elusive. This case really does have it all: tragedy, mystery, the dark side of technology, and the resilience of the human spirit.
It does, and it serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of online safety, the complexities of the criminal justice system, and the unwavering love of a mother who never gave up hope.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From Joanna's disappearance and the discovery of Summer Baldwin's body to Rosendo Rodriguez's conviction and execution, it's been a real roller coaster of emotions. But I keep thinking about the bigger picture here. What can we learn from this case? What are the takeaways that go beyond the headlines?
That's the question that lingers, isn't it? What makes a case like this relevant, relevant to our lives today?
Exactly. For me, the most striking aspect is the role of the internet. This was 2004. Social media, as we know, didn't even exist. But chat rooms they're becoming increasingly popular.
In this case, it really highlights how quickly those, seemingly harmless online spaces could turn dangerous.
It makes me think about how much the online world has changed since then. I mean, we have social media, online gaming, virtual reality. The ways in which young people connect and interact online are constantly evolving.
And that's why it's so important to have these open and honest conversations with kids about online safety. I mean, things have changed so much even since I was a teenager. I can only imagine how challenging it is for parents today to keep up with it all.
What are some of the red flags that parents should be looking for?
Well, one thing that stands out in this case is the fact that Rodriguez was following Joanna's case online before he even met her. I mean, that suggests a level of premeditation and a possible fascination with vulnerable young girls. Parents should be aware of any unusual online activity, especially if their child is interacting with someone they don't know in real life.
That's a good point. It's not just about monitoring who your kids are talking to online. It's about being aware of the content they're consuming and the potential risks involved.
Exactly. It's also crucial to teach kids how to protect their personal information online. Things like their full name, address, phone number, that information, that should never be shared with strangers.
It's a delicate balance, right? You want to encourage kids to explore the online world and all the positive things it offers, but you also want to protect them from the potential dangers.
It is. And it's an ongoing conversation. The online landscape it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
So it's important for parents to stay informed and adapt their approach as needed.
This case also brought up a lot of questions about the criminal justice system. The fact that Rodriguez was able to, renege on that plea deal, for example.
That was a frustrating turn of events. But it
Yeah.
but it highlights the complexities of the legal system, really.
Yeah. And even though Rodriguez was ultimately convicted and executed for Summer Baldwin's murder, he couldn't be tried for Joanna's murder because of that plea deal.
It's a difficult situation. I mean, on the one hand, you have a confession, but on the other hand, there's this legal technicality that prevents him from being held fully accountable for both crimes.
I'm sure that was incredibly difficult for Joanna's family to process.
It was. But throughout the entire ordeal, Kathy Rogers, I mean, she displayed incredible strength and resilience. She never gave up hope, and she fought tirelessly for justice for her daughter.
Her faith was clearly a source of comfort and strength for her, throughout this whole ordeal.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that many people can relate to, regardless of their own personal beliefs, the idea that there's, something greater than ourselves, something that can provide solace in times of unimaginable pain.
That's a powerful message. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into this case, I want to circle back to our initial question. What can we learn from the story of Joanna Rogers?
I think this case, it serves as a stark reminder of the importance of online safety, the complexities of the criminal justice system, and the enduring power of hope and resilience in the face of tragedy.
It's a reminder that even in a world that can sometimes feel dark and unpredictable, there are still good people, fighting for what's right, seeking justice and holding on to hope.
And ultimately, I think that's the message we want to leave with our listeners. Even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And even though we can't always prevent tragedies from happening, we can learn from them, grow from them,
Yeah.
and use them to make the world a better place.